What's going on, Steelers Nation? Victory Monday. Jumping on here to recap the Steelers 32-13 victory in Vegas over the Raiders. Lots to talk about in this one. Want to talk through some really impressive individual performances, but also just some things in the game that I think are pertinent topics. Where the Steelers, were able to get this win, and also some things, just kind of moving forward with the team as they sit at 4-2. Got a couple home game stretch coming up. Just before we get started, if you could make sure that you like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications. All that stuff is greatly appreciated on my end. Really with this one, I thought the Steelers got off to a slow start, which is really typical of like how they've started games, especially over the past couple of years. The defense gave up basically the opening drive touchdown on their end. Looked kind of slow out of the gate, but I thought after that they really clamped down. And this was a game. If you watch the preview, you could probably tell if I didn't straight out just say it. I thought the Steelers had a pretty noticeable talent advantage in this one, just in terms of the two rosters. Just because the Raiders extremely banged up for one, but two, I just thought the Steelers were a better team. Shout out to Steelers Nation too, like showing out crazy in Vegas. A lot of towels in the stands. Like it's pretty mind-boggling to watch it. I went to an away game a couple weeks ago. Just the amount of Steelers fans there are that not only travel but just like show up when the Steelers come to play in their town. That's just awesome to see. But it was good to see them get on track overall. I thought in this one, just some individual performances that I wanted to talk about. I thought that TJ getting a lot of attention over there on the left side of the defense. I think, I've talked through some stuff last week of ways that they could, free him up as a pass rusher to try to get him going in that regard a little bit. They didn't really feel, at least what I saw on live viewings, they didn't really feel the need, I guess, to do it this week. But he still made a huge impact in the game as a run defender. And I think that's kind of what makes him, special. He's a great player overall, but he's not just a great pass rusher. He's also a really good player against the run. The two punch outs, just awesome plays. The second of which, man, like I know this game ended up in a blowout, kind of got away from, Vegas in the second half in particular. But at that point in the game, I think it's a two-score game. I think they're down 15 at that point. They're on the goal line. Abdullah, I think, actually scored on that play prior, but they didn't challenge it. And then TJ punches the ball out, and it's a 7-point play because they're right on the goal line right there. It's just the amount of times that he comes through, really when the team needs it the most. I feel like it's just he's a special player, man. Like I hope that I'm sure Steelers fans do, or the majority of them do, but definitely don't take number 90 for granted, man. Like he's something we very, very rarely see at the NFL level. So I thought he was spectacular. The other thing that I thought was nice was, the Steelers had a better day running the football. Maybe not as like down to down consistent, but I thought Najee had by far his best day of the season. He ran pretty much buck wild in this one, creating for himself. I thought the big thing was like he was creating explosive runs. I mean, the 36-yard touchdown down the left sideline. I think that's his second longest run of his career, if I remember correctly. So, and like on that one in particular, I don't think that was necessarily blocked great on the perimeter. But he did a really good job finding open space for himself. You could kind of see it almost looked like he had a little bit more juice today than normal. Just because you could see, like, from the first play of the game, the Steelers are in their, two tight end set. They got both tight ends to the right, and they're running the Smith's favorite concept, mid zone to the weak side. And Harris cuts it off, like, right as Frazier and McCormick, they get ton of vertical displacement on the nose tackle. Move that dude like 4 or 5 yards off the ball. It's an incredible combo block. But he cuts it back, and then carries guys. I don't know, like what he carried guys like 8 yards or something like that after contact, and it just felt like he was in that mode where he wasn't going to go down on first contact. Of course, he had the other run where he cut it back to the right side and then gave the corner a little dead leg and then cut it back up for another explosive play. I thought it was by far his best game of the season. It was nice to see him get on track. He's typically a little bit of a slow starter anyway. I feel like he started the last 2 or 3 seasons like really slow over the month of September, and then like as we get to the second half of the season, he looks like a little bit different of a back. I also think a lot of that has to do with there's been a little bit of a revolving door on the offensive line, but I think I've been fairly impressed. I'm interested to see what the film says, but I've been fairly impressed with like some of the things I've seen from McCormick. I think the early returns, he's been better than I would have anticipated him being. And then Frazier, I mean, you guys have heard me talk about him. I feel like I've talked about him at length over the past couple weeks. We talked about him a ton in the film room last week when I streamed and went over every play of the offense. Frazier's been like borderline dominant. So it was really tough to see him go down with that injury yesterday. I'm not a doctor. I don't really want to speculate. They said ankle. It almost looked like a high ankle injury. Now, offensive linemen can't play on high ankle injuries like a couple weeks after they occur, so it's not as significant as it would be if you were like a receiver on the outside or something like that. But missing him for any amount of time is kind of a bummer, especially after they just had probably their best rushing game of the season, or at least Harris for sure. So, some of the other things that I noticed, I thought pass protection was okay yesterday. I thought they, for the like Crosby didn't completely wreck the game. He definitely had a good game, especially against the run. That's just kind of like the way that those kind of superstar type players do. 3 sacks on the afternoon. I didn't feel like Justin was under like a ton of pressure on the live viewing. I mean, there were definitely some lapses, some plays that he was able to get outside of structure and make things happen with his legs. But 3 sacks on the day. One of those was on that trick play that I just think that was pretty much dead on arrival, because the way that they're blocking that thing up, it's almost like they're blocking a zone play to the right, and they have, the reverse element of it. But typically on the backside of zone runs, like you're leaving the edge rusher unblocked. That's the quarterback's guy. Well, Justin's just kind of drifting in the pocket. Like he's not like you can't expect him to be responsible for somebody with his back turned to him. He's not bootlegging out or anything like that. They just don't have him blocked. And of course, he's sacked for like a huge loss. That was notable. I also thought like just some of the things in the game that I thought were good to see from a Steelers perspective. They weren't very good on third downs on offense. They didn't even have 300 yards of offense. Some of the points that they were able to put on the board were just the result of really getting good field position. But the Steelers forcing 3 turnovers in back-to-back weeks is a good thing. I always think that those are like the game swinging plays. Dante Jackson had the interception. Of course, you get the 2 forced fumbles. But what I was really happy to see with the defense, man, is getting off the field on third down. Like that has been a chore over the past couple of weeks. We talked about it in the film room. I think they were allowing like almost 60% completion rate or conversion rate, excuse me, on third down against the Colts and the Cowboys. Yesterday, the Raiders were 2 for 11. So I thought that was huge. And then, just look at like the time of possession aspect of it. Pittsburgh, 1 time of possession. I think a lot of people on Twitter like definitely care more about time of possession than I do personally. But a good way to make sure that you're in charge of, time of possession is, you get yourself off the field on third down. That way you can get back to the sideline, get you some rest. So that was good to see them get there as well. Passing the ball yesterday, I thought was a little bit of a chore. The EPA numbers and things like that, I thought Justin really showed well, and like the advanced numbers, made a lot of plays with his legs. Of course, like they continue to get in the red zone. And I feel like the best thing that they do in the red zone right now is just allow him to be a runner. That's one of the best things about this offense right now in general, is just his ability to scramble, run as a design runner. I thought the play design on the bootleg where they faked the pitch and then set it up to where he's got a puller in front of him, move it to the left. I thought that was an awesome play design by Art, to continue to use him. I mean, like when in the low red zone, like space is just so constricted. So having a quarterback that is a runner is just it's a huge advantage. Like you have to use it. You'll hear people talk about the +1 advantage of quarterbacks in the quarterback run game, but like especially when space gets tight, those numbers advantages really matter that much more. So I thought as a runner, Justin did some good things. He built him out on a couple different plays. There was a play specifically that I posted yesterday on Twitter. I believe it's in the second quarter, where they have an alert play at the line of scrimmage, and the entire offensive line's pass blocking, but Broderick's not. Like I think he thinks it's a run play maybe, and then Crosby's basically scot free off the edge, and Fields ends up pretty much recognizing it immediately, steps up in the pocket, and he turns it into a 14-yard gain. So it's like that should be a disastrous play for your offense. That should be a sack, a negative play. But he turns it into a borderline explosive. So it's like those things to me definitely stand out. I thought as a passer yesterday, it was shaky. And I thought that that was kind of the same thing last week. So I'm hoping that we're not like coming down to earth or, about to go into some type of a relapse for him as a passer. I thought that the interception that he threw over the middle of the field was brutal. Thankfully, that gets called back due to a roughing the passer penalty. But that was a huge penalty, man. Like no doubt. Like not only as it relates to this game, I still think the Steelers would have won this game regardless. But who knows? I don't have a crystal ball in front of me. But like he turns that ball over right there. There's going to be some discussions about maybe not going to Russ at halftime, but like as it relates to what the quarterback situation would look like moving forward next week. And, still, Tomlin has to make that decision. Personally, the way that I feel about it is I tweeted this last night, but I think they should just rip the band aid off and just decide on a quarterback, man. Like, and it's not, I don't want to get this misconstrued like it's like he owes it to the fans or like to the media or to content creators like me in terms of like letting us know who the quarterback's going to be. You just got to let the guys know in the locker room who they need to follow. Like that's a big thing. Like the starting quarterback is the leader of the unit and a big figure in terms of like being a leader in the locker room. Like those guys need to know who to rally behind, and can just end this whole charade of questions every single week. Now that Russ is healthy, like he was the backup yesterday, he went through full practices last week. Just pick somebody. I would personally, even with the regression a little bit over the past 2 weeks as a passer, where I think Justin's been a little bit inconsistent. I thought the accuracy yesterday was a little bit all over the place. Um, but even with that, I would still stick with him as a starter. That's just my opinion. I know some people out there, just like based on like people that I follow on Twitter that I think are, relatively smart and all that stuff, they think that they should go to Russ. I disagree. I think they should stick with Justin. But ultimately, my main thing is like regardless who you're gonna roll with the quarterback, like just make the decision, stand on it, and then I want to make this clear too. Like, just because you give Justin a vote of confidence and you stick with him moving forward next week or whatever, it doesn't mean you can't go back to Russ. If he struggles for 2 to 3 weeks, you lose 2 to 3 games in a row. He's not performing. He regresses, anything like that. It's not like you can't go back to Russ. So that would be the only thing I would say too. But he did some really good things with his legs yesterday. I thought there were some out of structure plays where him and Calvin hooked up for a couple big time third downs, one of which Justin kind of extended the play, rolled to his left, flipped his hips, and found Calvin with a strike over on a deep crossing route. That was good. I just think the in structure offense over the past 2 weeks has been just shakier than it was over the first month. So a little bit nervous, but I still think he played well enough yesterday to win, and that's ultimately what matters. They're 4-2. So in terms of like the receivers, still not getting anything from Van Jefferson. He wasn't even targeted yesterday. We are borderline, like we're talking about like borderline historically bad production for a starting wide receiver through the first 6 weeks of the season. 6 games, 62 receiving yards. I don't know what else there is to say. He's not really separating versus man coverage. We'll see what the tape says. Like maybe he was missed a couple times. We'll see. But I think the Steelers, like there's enough guys rumored to be available on the market that they've got to pick up somebody. It doesn't necessarily have to be Devontae Adams. If it is, cool. But you got to get somebody in there. And I think even if they don't, Roman Wilson was active yesterday. He played a handful of snaps, maybe like a half dozen or so. I don't even know if he ran more than a route or two, but wasn't targeted. But as he continues to like ramp up and they want to try to get him on the field, I think Calvin's shown enough to me to potentially be able to take some of those outside wide receiver reps when they're in 11 personnel and passing situations, just to get, because like Van's not winning. So like just to get your best group on the field, if they feel like Roman's better than he is as a pass catcher, you could potentially do that. So I mean, we'll see what it looks like. I still think that they need to make a move, especially if the goal is try to compete in the playoffs and things like that. The defense is going to have to be elite. The offense is going to have to maintain the level that they've been at through the first 6 weeks. Probably get a little bit better as the offensive line continues to gel. And then hopefully, they add another playmaker for Justin, helps elevate the play of the overall passing game in general. But really love what I saw from the running game yesterday. I thought that was a really big step in the right direction. Pickens wasn't a huge factor yesterday, had kind of a weird day, but I did like that they were, even in the blowout, I like that they were trying to get him involved. Just because maybe the way the game was going, he didn't really see a lot of targets. They started throwing the ball a bunch late when they were up a couple scores. I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. Personally, I think it's a good way to like try to get him engaged. Wide receivers, most of them care a lot about their stats. They got him the huge explosive off play action. Ball was underthrown. Pickens made a great catch to come back and get it, sliding to the turf. He probably should have had the touchdown catch in the end zone on the fade. But I like that they're trying different things in terms of like trying to get him some targets. I mean, the Steelers did the same thing with AB during the Ben era. I remember specifically there was a time where the Steelers were up late in the game and they could have easily just like kneeled the ball, but they ended up throwing like a swing pass out of the backfield to Antonio just to keep his like streak of like 5 catches for 50 yards or whatever it was, the NFL record that he had for a long time. Those things matter to receivers, even if you think they shouldn't, they do. So like just trying to find different ways to like, keep him engaged. So I think that those were good things. But obviously going to need more from the passing game in general, just 6.0 yards per attempt yesterday. Not really any noticeable things. Otherwise, I thought Patrick Queen defensively, that was another thing. I thought he might have had his best game as a Steeler. I'm very interested to see what the tape is. Thought Brock Bowers, he had the big catch called back, the one-hander that he had over the middle, but I thought they had a decent plan for him too. It seemed like the Raiders were kind of force-feeding him touches. The big thing that I was concerned about was, the Steelers are an excellent tackling team overall in comparison to the rest of the NFL. I think they're actually best in the NFL in terms of right now being like missed tackles. But I was a little bit concerned about Bowers like breaking one of those explosives because I didn't think the Raiders were going to be able to consistently move the ball on them, and they didn't. But explosive plays, I thought they did a good job keeping a lid on it. Bowers didn't have any crazy catcher runs. I think the one explosive play that I remember the Raiders getting, they kind of got on the double move where they got Porter, and the receiver ended up kind of mossing him a little bit at the catch point, but it wasn't like terrible coverage or anything like that. So did a good job keeping the lid on explosive plays. And like I said, getting off the field on third down was a huge thing. So it sounds like Alex Highsmith's going to be back for this Jets game. That's going to be a huge thing for me just because I think having another guy on the opposite side that can win one-on-ones. I think Jeremiah Moon, the huge block punt. We didn't even talk about that yet. That was a huge play in the game too to set them up in good field position. But they need Highsmith back. I'm not sure of like the timetable as much on Herbig, who's dealing with a hamstring. But being able to get more guys winning one-on-one, I thought Cam Hayward, did his thing yesterday, predictably up against a rookie left guard. Like you knew that he was going to have a good game. He had a couple really nice pass rushes. I think he had a sack as well. But just in the run game, like consistently, being in the backfield, bench pressing guys at the point of attack. Really good game for him. I don't know how much longer he's going to be able to keep this up, man. But I hope it's at least through the rest of the season because he's been really fun to watch on tape and he's having a fantastic year. So kudos to him. I know, like over the offseason, he felt like he had a lot to prove. There was a lot of people that was doubting. To be honest with you, I knew that Cam was going to still be able to be this level of a run defender. But I think what we've gotten from him as a pass rusher has even exceeded what I thought was possible. So kudos to him. He's worked his tail off. He's in great shape, clearly, playing the amount of snaps that he is. And he's dominating. You don't see this very often from a 35-year-old interior defensive lineman where they're still legitimately playing at like a Pro Bowl, all pro level. So it's good to see, man. Deshaun Elliott, just trying to run through some other like performances yesterday I thought were great. Like Elliott's been fantastic, man. There's no words to describe how great he's been in comparison to the contract that they signed him to. Just such a reliable tackler, man. He's making so many plays near the line of scrimmage. He's been excellent in run defense. It's been awesome. Like he's legitimately one of the guys that I thought he was just going to be kind of this complimentary player where you just hope that you didn't have a lot of mistakes from. He could free Minka up to play back in the post. And he's been so much more than that. He's making legitimately impact plays on a week in and week out basis. So I want to get to the offensive line too in the film room a little bit this week. Be posting some clips. We may do some run game stuff in the film room for the channel as well. So be on the lookout for that. I think overall, like I said, I'm a little bit worried about what the run game will look like without Frazier because he's been so good. No disrespect to like Ryan McCollum. It's just he's been playing at such a high level that not having him in the lineup is going to be huge. The Steelers are going to have to figure something out with Broderick. To me, man, like he just looks lost over there at right tackle, which is very odd. I think For me personally, I think the struggles with like his technique, or even early in the season when he was kind of more so dealing with the elbow thing, it was almost more understandable, but it's just like the blown assignments and just like there are multiple times a game, like we talked about in the film room last week, where he just looks completely lost, like he doesn't know what he's supposed to be doing. And I think that's kind of concerning for a guy in year two because it looks like the rest of the offensive line, now that they've got most of their guys that they want in the lineup, it looks like they're on the same page. It's just kind of him. So I'm a little bit concerned about that and what that looks like moving forward. Um, but we'll see. I want to dive into the film room to kind of get more, firm opinions on how that group played overall. But 4-2, two primetime games in a row at home. That's a huge stretch for the Steelers before really before the schedule gets pretty tough in the second half of the season. So be sure to let me know what you guys thought of the game in the comments. Also, if you have any like things that you want to see in the film room, please let me know those things as well. I'm always open to suggestions. Like to open those things up, especially on weeks where I don't necessarily have a firm set plan on like, okay, this is exactly what I want to do. Just on your way out, please make sure that you like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, all that stuff. And if you're interested in even more, X's and O's detailed content from me, please make sure that you consider, getting a membership to the channel. Like I said, there's a decent library over there now of like film room type content that you can go back and watch at your own leisure. And I'm really excited about like the things that we got going on the channel. Like I said, our channel sponsor Homage, they've got a couple new designs coming out. I think one of them drops tomorrow. So we'll see. Maybe we'll try to do a giveaway again in the month of October, depending on how things work out. So, but Victory Monday, you guys enjoy the rest of your week. Peace and love.